Hey everyone, do you have a place in your home that the paint just looks dated? Ugly? Maybe you have a room that looks similar to my bathroom here, where I have messy walls and this horrifying red colored wall. If so, this video is for you. For those returning to my YouTube channel, welcome back. If you're new here, welcome to the AG Squared channel, where I show all things DIY do-it-yourself related, from maintenance to repairs to renovation projects that everyone can benefit in knowing about, from renters to aspiring homeowners to current homeowners. In this video, I'm going to show you how I went from this nastiness to this much more modern, lighter, and brighter paint color with a black towel hanger finish that complemented these brand new floors and just made the bathroom look much better. I'm going to walk you through every step along the way and share tips so that you learn how to paint any room in your house. Let's go ahead and get started. First thing we're going to do is go through the materials needed. I recommend getting some of these microfiber cloths because they're going to be important when cleaning the walls. The dishwasher soap will be used for both prepping the walls and also for cleaning at the end. Having an inexpensive plastic putty knife along with this dry deck spackling material will help fill in any imperfections on the wall. Here is our metal paint roller tray along with a plastic liner so we keep the tray clean. This black cap comes with any gallon paint bucket at Home Depot, along with this tool to open the bucket lid. Painter's tape will be key, along with a high quality paintbrush. Depending on what area you're painting, you might need two different size rollers. If you will be painting high walls, a painter's adjustable pole will be invaluable. You'll also want a handheld painter's pail, and to keep it clean, some pail liners. And of course, the paint that you want to use. We can't forget one of my favorite tools, this multi-purpose painter's tool. Everyone needs to have one of these. It's so versatile. Just wait, you'll see. That's all the materials, folks. Let's begin with the prepping tasks. We'll start with prepping the roller so you get a smooth finish when painting that wall. It's as easy as taking your painter's tape and wrapping it around the roller. This is going to remove any loose fibers or debris that may be on the roller. Once we finish that, let's head inside and clean the walls. Don't skip this step. If the wall surface isn't clean, then the paint may not adhere well to it, or you may get an imperfect finish due to the oils, hairs, dust, or whatever else might be on the wall. Take one of the microfiber cloths, get it damp with lukewarm water, use some of that dish soap, and then mix it all together. I also have another microfiber cloth handy to dry the wall off after I clean it. Then you just need to be patient and begin cleaning the wall. While you're doing this, go ahead and clear off any of those embarrassing spider webs like you see in my bathroom here. Also, in my case, you can just see how much drywall dust was on these walls from all that sanding that took place when my contractors framed in a new shower wall. With clean walls, the next step is to address any minor imperfections on the wall. Things like small holes from screws, drywall anchors, nails, or any minor dents. This is where our plastic putty knife and bottle of spackle comes into play. We first need to cut off the tip using a pocket knife or box cutter. I really like this product because once the tip is cut, it's so easy to apply. Just squeeze and then take your putty knife and spread across the wall. Notice this technique. First apply, then spread by sliding the flat side of the putty knife across the area. Then rotate the putty knife so that the thin side is on the wall and slide that across the area. What we are doing with these two steps is not only filling in the imperfections, but also removing any excess spackle from the area. Repeat this for all of the areas that need it. Another reason I like this spackle product is because it's so easy to know once it dries. It's pink when it's wet, and it turns white once it's dry. That easy. The next step to prep will involve our painter's tape. Everywhere where the wall shares a side with any other material is an opportunity to use painter's tape to avoid painting on areas you don't want. This can include the door frames, the baseboard near the floor, the countertops, any tile work or shower walls, any light fixture or hardware fixture, and so on. Not only will the tape avoid you painting on areas you don't want to, but it will leave a clean finish that separates the paint from the other surface, making it look like a pro painted it. The downside to taping, you ask? Well, it's time consuming. But if you don't have the experience painting corners or sides with a brush with precision, I would consider it a must do step. As you gain practice and confidence, like me, you'll end up taping less and only around really tight areas. The technique to applying the tape is simple, but important. I recommend to practice with short strands of tape to start just to get the handle of things. You take the tape and carefully align it alongside the material you don't want to paint on. Once you have the entire strand on that material, press along that material to ensure that the tape fully seals it. If you don't do this well, the paint may seep through the tape and end up on the material regardless. You can use your fingers or your putty knife to generously apply force on the tape. Once you get the hang of this, my tip to you is to practice applying longer strands alongside the material, preferably a single strand where possible. This will make removing the tape at the end a much quicker and painless process. This is a lot of work just to prep, no kidding, but we're almost ready to paint. Before that, let me show you the most important technique when painting walls, and that is cutting the sides. This technique is used to paint alongside all edges without making a mess, and instead produce a clean and smooth finish. Notice how I'm grabbing the brush at an angle and using the entire side. I press down and using the brush's fibers to slide it alongside the surface. I'll show more examples of cutting shortly, so don't worry, you'll get a chance to see me doing this in practice. All right, let's go ahead and go outside and open up this paint bucket. If you try to open this thing using just your hands, you're in for a rude awakening. I didn't know that there was an easier way until years later. Let me save you the trouble. Remember this tool that I mentioned at the beginning? Well, not only is this used to pour the paint into a tray or pail, it is also used to open the bucket. Holy shit. It's as easy as putting it over this area and rotating it counterclockwise to loosen the lid. That easy. Once open, you just rotate it and then thread it onto the opening until it is on there tight. The first section we're going to be painting are all of the corners and areas that you taped around. Because of this, we'll first pour the paint into our painter's pail. Don't fill it up all the way to the top. You only need about a quarter or halfway. If you need more, you can simply pour more later. Let's head inside and finally begin painting. Here is another tip when cutting alongside the sides. You don't need much paint on the brush. Look how little I end up dipping my brush into the paint. And that's all you need. Now to apply the technique I showed earlier. I angle my brush to be as parallel to the side I'm painting on. Press down against the surface to let the hairs spread out and then slowly slide it alongside that surface. As I do this, I'm keeping an eye on how much paint is accumulating on my brush when sliding it. If it starts accumulating too much, I stop and then paint the excess away from the side I'm cutting on. As I continue demonstrating this, it's worth noting that simply cutting in isn't sufficient. Once you cut alongside the entire side of the wall, you'll also want to paint with the brush around 2 to 4 inches away from the side as well. This will allow us to take a roller and avoid accidentally painting on areas we don't want to. Here is another important tip. On the areas where a wall meets another wall, that corner, you also want to use your brush to paint alongside that edge. Applying a technique where you paint using the side of the brush like you see me doing here. This will prevent applying too much paint at the wall intersections, which will in turn reduce the chances of paint dripping. Paint drips, once they dry, will look bad and diminish all of your hard work. Okay, folks, we'll be doing this for all of the sides and corners in the room you are painting. And once done, it'll look something like this. Notice how you're able to tell the difference here. All of those corners and intersections where the walls, where the ceilings are touching, are now painting, including where the baseboards are. This is what you want to see, because now you're ready to take your paint roller and start doing the fun part, which is painting at a much faster pace thanks to those rollers. To start, we'll pour any remaining paint from our paint pail and put it on the tray's liner. Then we'll use our bucket and pour more paint onto the tray. Do not over pour, folks. Pour slowly and just enough to fill this portion of the tray. If you pour too much, you'll end up making a mess when you dip your roller into the tray. Next, let's remove the tape that we applied around the roller. Here is another tip to get a better painting result. Apply some water on the roller, just enough to get it slightly damp, but not wet. Use your hand to distribute the water on it throughout the entire surface. This will improve the roller's ability to soak into paint and get a better application on the wall. When putting the roller onto the handle, avoid hurting yourself by getting pinched. This is never fun when it happens. It hurts. And to avoid this, do not have your hands anywhere near the ends where the roller will end up onto the handle. Instead, with your hand, hold the roller from the center and push it fully into the handle. Next, take the roller and gently apply it over the paint. Do not fully submerge it in, folks. Look how little is actually needed here. That is more than enough to paint. Roll it up and down alongside the tray to distribute the paint evenly throughout the roller. Now to paint the wall. Here is the technique I learned and have been using. To initially apply, start at the top and then make a sequence of V motions from left to right. Do this for around 3 to 4 V's, so around 2 or 3 W's. And then go back and roll the brush using an up and down motion from left to right. When doing this, you should apply some force onto the wall to get the paint to squeeze out of the roller. Do this up and down motion until you completely cover with paint the V section you applied. When you approach a side of the wall, be sure to have the roller's flat side facing towards that wall. Then continue rolling the paint up and down. Here is another game-changing tip. Once you finish applying the paint on a section of the wall, take the roller and without any force, gently roll it starting from the top, from left to right, until you go over all of the painted area. What this is doing is evenly spreading the paint and avoiding the chances of any paint drips from forming. Doing this will produce a much higher quality result at the end. Don't worry if the first pass is not perfect. As you finish painting the other walls, you'll have a chance to come back and apply a second coat if necessary. And also, note that the paint will look better once it fully dries. Don't worry if the paint seems off while it's wet. It will get better. And that's the name of the game, folks. From here on out, it's just a matter of repeating the steps. Here is another tip. Put the metal tray and your bucket in an area where you will not accidentally step or trip over it. This happens to everyone, so please don't forget this. If you are painting a wall, place the tray in a completely different area of the room. The same goes for the bucket or pail of paint. If you are doing this for the first time, I recommend to buy one of these cloth tops and roll them on the floor surrounding the walls you are painting. Although paint is easy to remove from a hard surface using a wipe, if you spill anything more than just some small drops, you'll want to have a cloth to avoid making a mess on your floor. If you are painting over a carpet, this is a must. Time for the grand reveal. I've finished painting the bathroom. This is going to brighten up this entire room. We're in the finished basement, so by using a lighter color on the walls and this flushed lighting with a cool temperature, it's going to make the space feel more open. A complete 180 improvement from that nasty red wall that used to be here. You'll notice that the camera is picking up some imperfections on the wall. That's okay. It will look better at the end once it fully dries. Time to remove the painter's tape. You want to do this not right away when the paint is still wet, because you'll end up removing some paint and making the finish look worse, but also not after it fully dries, because then when removing the tape, it'll cause the paint to crack. I like removing the tape maybe a few hours after painting. To remove, you want to peel it off at a 45-degree angle from the surface of the wall. So I'm basically just slowly pulling it away, always at 45 degrees, and as I accumulate a long strand of tape, I pause and bundle up the tape into a ball. Then continue slowly removing it. Look at that. That just looks clean. A job well done. Before cleaning up, now is the perfect time to do a quality check for any areas that may need more paint. If you see any area that still shows the old paint, like you see here, simply take your brush and apply back and forth strokes to get a smooth distribution around that area. You don't want the section to have too much paint because otherwise you will see the difference once it fully dries. And although the brush is great to fix isolated areas, if you see a large area that needs more paint, consider doing a second coat with the roller, repeating the same technique you did for the first coat. We're not done yet, folks. Let me share one of the things that is easily forgotten when planning for a painting project: cleaning up. Should you clean your brushes over a sink? Do you just throw away your brush or roller? How do you clean it so that you can reuse it for future projects? All questions I had with no answers when I did my first paint project. Today, I'm going to share with you the best way to clean everything. A technique I learned by volunteering for Habitat for Humanity, an organization that I recommend everyone to volunteer with, as it's an incredible way to learn how to be handy while giving back to the community. Let's start by pouring any excess paint into the bucket. Then take the pourer off the bucket, get the lid back on, and tighten it back on. If you took out the entire lid, then use a mallet to put it back on securely. Next, grab an empty bucket, the dish soap, and go where you have access to a garden hose, and around an area where you'll be able to wash off the paint on. With the garden hose pointing towards the roller, spray water onto it. Grab onto the roller such that the water won't cause it to spin as you're applying it over the roller and cause paint to get all over the place. Once you get the roller sufficiently wet, grab your multi-tool and notice that arc that you see right there. You're going to wrap that arc around the roller and simply slide it alongside the roller to squeeze out any excess paint from the roller. Do this several times while the water is running. Once you start noticing that the roller doesn't have as much paint inside of it, you can throw it into the bucket. I'm going to do the same thing with the brush. Well, kinda. I'm not going to be using the multi-tool. Spray water onto the brush. Squeeze the threads to remove as much of that paint as possible. Now, while I'm doing this, it is worth mentioning that the paintbrush is okay to clean off using a sink inside the house. These don't have as much paint on them. But if you're already outside, might as well save your pipes from that paint. Once both the brush and the roller are inside the bucket, squeeze out some of the dish soap into the bucket. You don't need too much, but enough so that once you start filling the bucket with water, that you have a nice foam being produced. Fill up the bucket with enough water to fully submerge the rollers and the paint brushes. I recommend leaving this soaking for at least a couple or a few hours, but if you let them soak for, say, 6 to 12 hours overnight, that's not a problem. When removing the roller and brush from the bucket, you'll spray water over them and then dry them off. They'll now be ready for the next project. The last thing we have to do is just throw away the tray liner and paint pail liner, and we are done. I hope you found this video informative and that it provided you with the knowledge to DIY paint your home's bedroom, bathroom, or your entire house without spending too much money. Not only will you save money, but it's going to feel incredibly rewarding and empowering whenever you see the end product and you can say, yeah, I did that. Please go ahead and like and share this video as it helps me out immensely. And also, consider subscribing to my channel where I show a lot more DIY do-it-yourself projects ranging from flooring, electrical, plumbing, drywall, and other repairs and maintenance projects. Knowledge that can help any renter and aspiring or current homeowner. As always, folks, thank you for watching and good luck painting.